There's a strange moment that happens when someone starts making $100,000 a year. Not when they get the job, not when they see the offer letter, not even when the first paycheck hits their bank account. It happens months later, usually in a grocery store, or while sitting in traffic, or while staring at a credit card statement they barely remember creating. Because they suddenly realize something that wasn't supposed to happen. They make six figures now, and somehow they don't feel rich. That realization has confused millions of people. For decades, $100,000 was treated like a finish line. A number people imagined while working late shifts. A number college students dreamed about. A number parents hoped their kids would someday reach. Six figures. It sounded different, serious, successful. Like the point where money problems finally disappear. But when people actually get there, something unexpected happens. Many feel relieved. Many feel proud. But a surprising number also feel disappointed. Not because $100,000 is a bad income. Far from it. The strange part is that reality rarely looks like the picture they spent years imagining. And that's where things get interesting. Because making $100,000 a year doesn't just change your bank account, it changes your relationship with money, your expectations, your social circle, your spending habits, even your definition of success. And what happens next is something most people never see coming. For most of history, six figures carried a certain magic. The phrase itself became a symbol. People didn't say someone made $103,000. They said they made six figures. It sounded exclusive, like entering a different category of life. A category where financial stress became optional, where people drove nice cars, owned homes, took vacations, and never worried about the price of dinner. For years, this belief became part of American culture. Movies reinforced it, parents repeated it, career advice centered around it. Get the degree, get the promotion, reach six figures, then you're set. And honestly, it makes sense. When you're making $40,000, $50,000, or even $60,000 a year, six figures looks enormous from a distance. The gap feels life-changing. You imagine freedom, you imagine breathing easier, you imagine finally stopping the constant mental calculations. Can I afford this? Should I wait? Is it worth it? You assume those questions disappear, but they don't. They just change form. Because the moment income rises, expectations rise with it. And expectations have a remarkable ability to consume progress. A person making $50,000 often imagines that someone making $100,000 has everything figured out. A person making $100,000 often imagines that someone making $250,000 has everything figured out. And someone making $250,000 may be looking at millionaires thinking exactly the same thing. The destination keeps moving, the finish line keeps relocating, and the human brain barely notices it happening. Imagine a guy who finally lands a job paying $100,000. For years, he drove an older car, lived with roommates, watched every dollar. Then suddenly, his income doubles. At first, everything feels amazing. The first few paychecks create a rush. He checks his banking app constantly. The numbers feel unreal. Maybe he upgrades his apartment. Nothing crazy, just a nicer place. Then maybe he replaces the car. Again, nothing outrageous, just something reliable. Then he starts eating out more, taking better vacations, buying better furniture, paying for convenience. And honestly, none of these decisions seem unreasonable. Individually, they're not. But collectively, something begins happening. His lifestyle quietly starts chasing his income. Not sprinting, just walking right behind it. Month after month, year after year. Until eventually, the extra money that once felt enormous starts feeling normal. The new apartment becomes the apartment. The nicer car becomes the car. The upgraded lifestyle becomes life. And what once felt luxurious slowly becomes invisible. This is one of the strangest features of human psychology. We adapt to almost everything. The dream house eventually becomes the house. The dream salary eventually becomes the salary. The dream life eventually becomes normal life. Not because we're ungrateful, because our brains are designed to normalize improvements. If they didn't, we'd spend every day overwhelmed by ordinary comforts. Air conditioning, running water, smartphones, electricity. Things previous generations would have considered extraordinary. Instead, we barely notice them. The same thing happens with income. At first, $100,000 feels huge. Then it feels expected. Then it feels necessary. Then, for some people, it starts feeling insufficient. Not because reality changed, because perception changed. And perception often matters more than numbers. But there's another layer nobody talks about. When income rises, social comparison becomes more intense. A person making $45,000 may compare themselves to neighbors. A person making $100,000 often starts comparing themselves to coworkers, And coworkers at that level may be making $130,000 or $180,000 or $250,000. Suddenly, the comparison pool changes. And comparison is a game nobody wins because there is always someone ahead, someone with the bigger house, the newer SUV, the vacation photos, the kitchen renovation, the backyard pool, the investment portfolio. Social media pours gasoline on this process. Every scroll becomes a highlight reel, a collection of carefully selected moments, luxury vacations, home purchases, career milestones, business wins. The viewer rarely sees debt, stress, arguments, overtime, sacrifices, or the financial reality behind the image. They only see outcomes, and outcomes can be incredibly deceptive. A family earning $100,000 might look wealthy to one person. Meanwhile, they may feel financially trapped, especially in expensive cities. $100,000 in one part of America can provide significant comfort. In another, it can feel surprisingly ordinary. Location changes everything. Housing costs, taxes, insurance, childcare, transportation. The same salary can create entirely different realities. And that's one reason conversations about income often feel confusing. People aren't talking about the same experience. They're talking about different worlds. But perhaps the most surprising change happens internally, not externally. When people reach a goal they've spent years chasing, they expect permanent satisfaction. The promotion, the house, the salary, the achievement. But satisfaction rarely works that way. The anticipation is often stronger than the possession. Think about how much time people spend imagining future milestones. Years, sometimes decades. Then the milestone arrives. There's excitement, celebration, validation. And then life continues. Monday still arrives. Laundry still exists. Traffic still exists. Bad days still happen. The human mind quietly starts searching for the next target, the next improvement, the next level. Because pursuing goals and possessing goals are psychologically different experiences. One creates momentum, the other creates adaptation. And adaptation is powerful. That's why some people hit six figures and immediately start thinking about $150,000, then $200,000, then $300,000. Not because they're greedy, because humans naturally recalibrate. The horizon moves, and we follow it. But that isn't the real twist. The real twist is that many people eventually discover that money solves different problems than they expected. Money can reduce certain stresses. It can create options, flexibility, security, breathing room. Those things matter enormously. But some problems survive every salary increase. Loneliness doesn't disappear because income rises. Burnout doesn't automatically disappear. Anxiety doesn't check tax returns before showing up. A person can earn six figures and still feel lost, still feel uncertain, still feel behind. That's often shocking to people who haven't reached that income yet. Because from the outside, six figures looks like the answer. From the inside, it often feels more like a tool, a powerful tool, but still just a tool. And tools solve specific problems. Not every problem. Consider two people making exactly $100,000. One feels wealthy, the other feels broke. Same income, different experience. Why? Because income alone doesn't determine financial reality. Obligations do. Debt does. Expectations do. Lifestyle does. The person who feels wealthy may have fewer expenses, lower expectations, and more control over their time. The person who feels broke may be carrying obligations that consume every dollar. The difference isn't always earnings. It's often the relationship between earnings and commitments, and that's something nobody tells you when you're younger. People talk endlessly about making money. They spend far less time talking about keeping flexibility. Yet flexibility is often what people are actually chasing. The ability to say yes, the ability to say no, the ability to walk away, the ability to breathe. Money can help create that, but only if it isn't immediately converted into obligations. And that's where many people get trapped. Every raise creates new fixed costs. A larger mortgage, a larger car payment, more subscriptions, more expectations, more commitments, until eventually they earn far more than before, but somehow feel less free. The income grew, the flexibility didn't. And that's a difficult realization, because from the outside, success often looks obvious. Inside the experience, it can feel surprisingly complicated. Then comes the unexpected truth. The people who seem most comfortable at $100,000 are often not the people making the most. They're the people who stop treating income as an identity. They don't introduce themselves through salary. They don't measure every decision through status. They don't need every purchase to prove progress. Money becomes a resource rather than a scoreboard. And that shift changes everything. Because once income stops being a symbol, it becomes useful. It becomes practical. It becomes quieter, less emotional, less performative, more intentional. What most people don't realize is that reaching $100,000 doesn't reveal how much money you have. It reveals what you expected money to do. If you expected it to eliminate every insecurity, you'll probably be disappointed. If you expected it to create options, you'll probably feel grateful. The salary didn't change, the expectation did. And expectations shape experience far more than most people realize. That's why two people can stand in the exact same financial position and tell completely different stories. One sees abundance, one sees scarcity. One sees freedom, one sees pressure, one feels ahead, one feels behind. The number stayed the same. The interpretation changed. And maybe that's the biggest surprise of all. For years, people imagined that making $100,000 a year will transform their lives overnight. In some ways, it does. It can create opportunities that weren't available before. It can reduce financial stress. It can provide stability. It can make life easier. But the deeper changes aren't found in the paycheck. They're found in what happens after the excitement fades. When the number becomes normal. When the novelty disappears. When the dream becomes reality. Because that's the moment the real question appears. Not how much money you're making, but what you're expecting that money to mean. And once that question enters the picture, six figures starts looking very different. Not as a finish line, not as a guarantee, not as a magical threshold where life suddenly makes sense, just another point on the journey where people discover something they never expected. The number they spent years chasing was never the whole story, and maybe it never could be.